This is a video critiquing the epistemology of atheist YouTube philosopher Tom Jump, who has been engaged in a ton of different debates over the years online. And this is what I'll be critiquing is what he says in a discussion that he had with a presuppositionalist. And I'll be critiquing the comments, mostly Tom's comments, to show how his epistemology is something that cannot justify beliefs, and therefore he cannot have knowledge in his own worldview.
When you know something, for example, the proposition, things appear to me a certain way, what is going on? What is knowledge in a worldview in which, I don't want to assume, are you a physicalist in regards to human beings?
I don't hold to an ontology, so my view is just strictly epistemological. I think, therefore I am, and then I can start describing things from this way. That's it. So I don't actually, like I said before, it could be the case that I am a product of reality and that my consciousness is a material process, or it could be the case that consciousness and material are two separate things, like dualism, or it could be the case that reality is a product of my mind, or mind in general, like idealism or solipsism. But I don't take a position on any of those because none of those are relevant to my point. All I need to know is that I think, therefore I am, because whichever one of those is the case, you still get the same result either way. There is still some difference between my imagination and my experience in all three cases. The same difference exists. I can still say it appears to me I'm holding a cup, and it's still true in all three cases. So regardless of which ontology is the case, materialism, dualism, idealism, theism, pantheism, whatever, I still get all the same stuff I've talked about. So no matter how you change the ontology, all of my epistemology is unaffected. It's still true.
Yeah, I guess.
So Tom is there showing that he doesn't believe that in order to demonstrate that you have knowledge, that you have to hold to a certain view of the nature of being and the nature of the way in which an object exists in reality. And so how this is a problem is that language requires an ontology. When you say words, they mean things to people. And when you don't know the true nature of reality when it comes to ontology, when you say you don't have a way to justify your beliefs about ontology, then you can't use language, because when people use language, they're describing the way in which things exist, and they're describing the nature of being for things. And so Tom can't use language in his own worldview, and I will demonstrate that.
I guess I'm having difficulty because unless the world is a particular way, in other words, would you say the world, reality is such that we can know things about reality?
Well, yeah, I think, therefore I am. That does tell me stuff about reality.
Right, but that...
Tom likes to say, I think, therefore I am. And he uses that as his starting point, and he says that's what he knows. Well, the word knowledge means something, and knowledge is not a physical thing. It's not a physical object. Knowledge is justified true belief. This is a basic definition of knowledge that various philosophers have accepted. It's justified true belief. So in order to have knowledge, you have to believe something. Is a belief a physical object? Is it a physical thing? No. When you say, I believe this, you're indicating to someone, I have these thoughts about this thing. This is a conceptual thing that's happening. This is not a physical process that's happening. My thoughts are not physical objects that occur in reality. When you say that to someone, that's what you're communicating. So when someone hears you say, I believe this, and at the same time, the nature of reality is we don't know the nature of believing, then someone can't understand what you're saying when you say, I believe, or I have beliefs, because they don't know if you're saying physical objects come into existence, these things that people call concepts that are actually physical, nobody knows if you're saying, oh, these are physical objects that are occurring in what people think is a mind, but it's not actually a mind. It's just all physical. Maybe people can't understand that it's not that, and that it's conceptual, because it could be physical. How can any person understand what you're saying when you say, I have knowledge, when knowledge requires beliefs, and beliefs have to be conceptual according to the definition of beliefs? If you're using the word beliefs, you can't use that to mean physical objects. If you want to define beliefs as physical objects, then you'd have to explain that to people, and you'd have to redefine the word beliefs. So if Tom wants to do that, he could do that, but he'd have to explain what he means with his language, and then he'd be explaining an ontology and making a differentiation between beliefs and physical objects, and conceptual and non-conceptual, conceptual and physical. How does he communicate about beliefs and about knowledge if we don't even know what knowledge is? Is knowledge a physical object, or is it conceptual? Is it thoughts? This is a huge problem. So he can't claim to have knowledge by saying, I think, therefore I am, because by rejecting the ontology, by rejecting that thinking has a certain ontology, now he's made it possible for thinking to mean physical objects are appearing and disappearing in what people think is a mind, but it's actually just physical things happening. If we don't know the nature of reality, that could be the nature of reality. If we don't have the true ontology of things, that could be the case. So how do we know it's not the case? How do we know what he's talking about? We cannot understand what Tom is talking about when he says, I think, therefore I am, if we can't determine what thinking actually is. And he says in this video that the I could just refer to the thinking. But now he can't use the word I, and the word I is meaningless, because for all he knows, the thinking is just a rapid succession of different consciousnesses coming in and out of existence, giving and he just interprets that to be a stream of consciousness that belongs to one entity that he can call I. But now that he doesn't have ontology, he can't use the word I to mean anything significant, because it could be we, it could be plural. I means something. It means a singular pronoun. It means there's a singular thing, but he doesn't know if a singular thing is doing the thinking. The thinking could be the product of a hive mind, and it's all of these different minds doing the thinking all at once. Let's continue.
That doesn't seem to just be epistemologically related. That seems to assume some kind of ontology.
What do you mean? Because from my perspective, it doesn't assume any kind of ontology. Like it's ontology invariant. So no matter how you change the ontology, that statement is still going to be true no matter what.
And I genuinely, maybe you could help me understand this.
No, your statement is not going to be true, because the statement is using language, and language requires ontology to be understood. Because if you don't understand the ontology of the things you're talking about, then the language is unintelligible. You can't have intelligibility if you can't use language.
How does that position not presuppose any ontology when you acknowledge that?
Oh, I apologize. Let me clarify. It does presuppose there is an ontology, but it doesn't tell us what that ontology is. So it could be materialism, it could be dualism, it could be idealism, it could be infinitely many possible things. It does presuppose, I guess, there is an ontology. It doesn't tell us what the ontology is. So it doesn't presuppose a particular ontology, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I guess I'm confused. Is that in other words, seems to say you have no idea what the nature of reality is. And
correct.
That's what you're saying. I'm challenged.
Notice how the presuppositionalist says you have no idea what the nature of reality is, the true nature of reality, and Tom says correct. This is how absurd his epistemology is.
Challenging whether you could actually know what you say you know to actually be the case. I mean, you believe that nature is such that we can come to know certain things, and That seems to be an ontological commitment. And it becomes difficult to critique since I don't have enough information. I don't even know what I'm critiquing, because on key issues, which is fine. I mean, we don't know everything, of course. On key issues that would be helpful to me in furthering this kind of discussion, you're just undecided. So this would probably be, if we weren't having this discussion, I'd probably want to hang out with you a little more and kind of hash those things out with you. I'm not sure we'll cover the next 20 minutes.
Well, yeah. So my position is just I think therefore I am. That is the ultimate starting point. And regardless of what the ontology is, regardless of whether or not I'm a materialist, bluist, idealism, nothing can change that. It can't make it false. Like I can't.
Yes, it could be false, because the thinking might not actually be thinking. And the fact that thinking is occurring doesn't mean that any given consciousness has belief. In order to have knowledge, belief has to exist. But he can't prove in his own worldview that any given consciousness lasts longer than... He can't prove that any given consciousness lasts long enough to even possess a belief, because a belief is something that exists in time. You need a certain amount of time in order for a belief to occur. And so he can't even demonstrate that any consciousness lasts long enough for a belief to occur in that consciousness, and therefore a belief can't exist at that point. And anything he thinks is a belief wouldn't be a belief. It would just be a string of different consciousnesses coming in and out of existence in rapid succession, giving the illusion of a consciousness possessing belief, but it wouldn't actually be belief, because it would just be tiny micro consciousnesses that only last a nanosecond coming into existence and going out of existence in rapid succession, with no way to justify the statement, I think, therefore I am, because the I is a singular pronoun, and the thinking wouldn't be able to be defined as belief, and therefore knowledge couldn't be claimed, because belief is required for knowledge according to the definition of knowledge. If he wants to redefine the word knowledge, then he needs to do that and explain that to people, and then whenever he uses the word, he has to explain that. But then when he explains what knowledge is, he would have to be giving an ontology at that point. So this is just totally absurd.
I can't believe I exist and be wrong. It's not possible. It doesn't matter how you change the ontology.
Right. It seems to be that there needs to be some ontological...
Well, you can't make sense of that sentence, because he's using the word I, and for all he knows, it's we that's doing the thinking.
Context in which that statement is meaningful,
and that doesn't lead to knowledge, because knowledge requires beliefs. His argument basically boils down to stuff happens, like thinking happens, but he can't define what thinking is, because he rejects a certain he rejects putting into a box, in an ontological box, what a thing actually is. So he can't define what thinking is, and so we don't know what thinking is, and all he's got is just thinking happens. Well, that doesn't get you anywhere, and we don't know what thinking is, so it's basically just stuff happens. That is not an epistemology that makes sense of reality. You can't have knowledge in that worldview.
Feel as though there's a little, and I don't mean this, insulting. I think there's a little waffling going on. Is that I exist, but I don't know what that means. I exist. It's like, well, I mean, some more information would be helpful in terms of hashing that out, because I'm having difficulty seeing how we can understand what existence is without an ontological context in which existence can be defined. Because I grant, from my worldly perspective, I presuppose my own existence, and I think it's foolish to deny my own existence. I understand that, but I have proximate starting points and ultimate starting points. My proximate starting point is my own mind, because I actually have to think about stuff in order to even reason. But my ultimate starting point is the ontological truth of the Christian worldview, which gives context and meaning for the idea of existence. And so that's why, if there is no ontological commitment, to be honest, I wouldn't even know where to start, since there's not enough information in regards to what you think about existence because you don't know what the I is. You said it can be an infinite number of things, and it would be difficult to further the conversation at that point on this particular topic.
Well, right. So my position is just starting with that and saying just that one fact without saying anything about ontology. I can get intelligibility. I've
Yeah,
got everything I need
yeah,
right there. So
yeah,
why do I need to say anything about ontology? Like ontology isn't even relevant at this point.
yeah.
Yeah, you do, because intelligibility requires thinking. It requires concepts. It requires intelligence in a mind. So, if he can't demonstrate that conceptual reality actually exists, then he can't claim that he has intelligibility, because if the ontology of thinking is actually physical and it's just physical objects occurring or coming into existence or moving around or doing things, then that's not intelligibility. That's not what it means. And he even says in this video that intelligibility is involved with concepts. Well, concepts have a certain ontology. They're not concepts if they're physical objects.